All right, we're going to move on to Unit 5, which talks about urban patterns. If we're talking about the United States, almost everybody in the United States lives in some kind of urban environment. Over 90% of our population is living in a city-type environment, and more people are moving to urban areas every day. And that's true anywhere, not just in the United States. The number of people living in cities right now is higher than it's ever been in all of human history, for a lot of reasons, right? Cities are getting bigger. Cities are where the jobs are. Cities are where our entertainment is. Restaurants, our governments, all kinds of things that people are looking for. So when we're talking about the process of urbanization, right, we are talking about the process by which people are living and employed in a city. Cities offer, or urban areas offer, what's called a nucleated form of settlement. And we've talked about this in all of the patterns and models that we're going to look at in a little bit, right? There's a core area, the central business district. Wallerstein calls it the central place, right? And then from there is different types of settlement, which are dispersed from that central area. All right. When we talk about cities, right, we're going to talk about urbanization. Right, and we know that there are various hearths of urbanization. And if you remember from our unit on agriculture, the hearths of agriculture coincide with the hearths of urbanization. Right, Mesopotamia, the Nile River, Indus River Valley, the river valleys in China, as well as Mesoamerica. You have to have agriculture first. You have to have the ability to feed people in order for there to be some type of city environment. And in city environments, we're talking about the fact that you have a whole bunch of people that are starting to live together, and you need to have some form of organization, right? You have to have the idea that, people are going to live in one place, work in another. We know that you have to have not only this agricultural surplus, but social stratification, and in particular, a leadership class, right? The leadership class needs to understand and be able to deal with this agricultural surplus, how to store it, how to divide it up, right, and move it or give it out as needed, right, to the various people that are living there. You have to have some set of morals or laws or some structure that tells people what they can and cannot do, right, to prevent some type of chaos, right? So the hearts of urbanization, connected to agriculture, connected to this idea that we have some kind of order, leadership class, and storage of an agricultural surplus. Let's look at the urban hierarchy, right? There's a hierarchy because we know we have some smaller towns, some larger towns. You'll recognize the hamlet, village, town, city labels from Wallerstein's central place theory. Right, those are all part of the different ways that he structures how cities are laid out. Right, hamlet being the smallest, villages being next, and then towns, and then of course a city, some well-defined central place, right, with the suburbs around it and the various areas of business, entertainment, education, and living arrangements as well. What they've added to the top here, right, is the megalopolis, right, that area that has gotten to be so big that it's almost grown together, right? You don't really leave one city and go out into the rural environment before you enter another city, right? These cities have grown so big that they move from one place, right, to another, and you're staying in the city, right? Our area in the United States is that area up in the Northeast, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C. You see that Bosnawash is kind of that Boston, New York, Washington area. You'll hear it, called that place, that sometimes. And we'll come back to that in just a second when we get back to the central place theory. All right, let's look at world cities because they are also part of the urban hierarchy. All right, world cities are cities that function as part of a network of service in the world environment, right, in a global environment. While a city like Frisco, for example, might service the area around it. Other cities have a service area that's much, much bigger, right? You know that if you go to New York, you're going to talk about not only the federal government and the state government and the city government that functions in those areas, but you have Wall Street that serves as a financial district for not just the region that includes New York, but also for the world, right? You also have entertainment that is world entertainment, draws people in from all over the world. You also have things like education, the United Nations, right? All of those things function in a world area. And even within world cities, you have a hierarchy. We just dealt with alpha, beta, and gamma. You see here that they've even broken it up as to the top alpha and then the bottom alphas as well, right? So these are all areas that connect in some kind of like network, right? If you think of them as nodes in a network, some network nodes are obviously much more important than others. All right, when we're also talking about the urban hierarchy, we also want to include things like a primate city, right? Cities that are the big city of the state. Also megacities, right? Megacities are cities that have a population of over 10 million people. There's a lot of megacities around, but when we talk about megacities in particular, we're looking at areas in the periphery. A lot of megacities and some of the growing megacities in the world are located in the periphery. They are over 10 million people, and typically they tend to be the biggest cities. It's where everybody's going for jobs, even though those jobs may not necessarily be there. All right, let's look at models of different cities. Right, we're going to look at particularly North American city models first, and those are the three big ones that we talked about. What you need to remember is that these are characteristics of North American cities. Do not use these models if you are asked a question about European cities. European cities are different. We're going to talk about those in just a little bit. All right, we have the Burgess's concentric zone model, which is the one on the far left. Again, all of these are dealing with the city of Chicago, right? Particularly after the Chicago World's Fire when they built the city, right? Burgess's model starts with a central business district, the CBD, and grows out in rings, right? And each zone has its own function, right? If we talk about functional zonality, this is part of what we're talking about. The central business district is where you're going to find government, office space, financial businesses. All of those are located in the central city. The zone of transition is that part that probably was initially when we were able to start to move out of the city a little bit, is where there were some older and maybe some nicer homes. Those homes now are in transition, right? As people got more money, they left, right? And in that process of secession, somebody else moves in. Usually they are of a lower economic status, right? But in the Burgess's model, that zone of transition has lower income housing, but it's also an area where the central business district is pushing out. It doesn't have anywhere else to go, so it's pushing into that zone. And you're seeing more things like industrial parks and industrial manufacturing that are pushing into lower income housing, right? So you have that. That's why it's called a transitional zone. As you move out, you have the zone of independent worker homes, probably lower to middle class, lower middle class homes that are nice homes, nothing spectacular, right? They may include some houses of some that were at one time some of the wealthier houses, because only the rich could afford to move out. But they are now, just kind of average blue collar, entry-level white collar jobs. And then as you move out further, better residences. This is where the rich went to get away from the city. And they started to build their homes. Think of like Swiss Avenue kind of area. And then finally you have the fifth zone, which is the commuter zone. Those are your outlying suburb areas where people move, right, to have a nice house, to have green space, better schools, places for their kids to play, but then they commute into business in the central business district. That's the first model that came about. The second one is Hoyt's sector model. Hoyt says, that concentric zone model's not that great. I mean, it's sure it explains a lot, but people don't grow in these lovely concentric zones. He says they grow this way in a sector model, right, where everybody has access to the central business district, right? But instead they grow out from that area in kind of a pie-shaped or sector type model. He includes some of the same zones, the central business district, the higher higher income resident, middle income resident, lower income resident, but he includes sectors that are for industrial areas, for education and recreation, as well as transportation. And then the last one is the multiple nuclei model. That one kind of comes out because Harris and Ullman are saying, look, here's these two models. And those were great, and maybe they worked at that time, but that's not how cities grow anymore. Right? Cities grow very differently. It's not this pretty organic looking, model. It's kind of messy. And because of urban sprawl, we just build as we want to build. And so you see some of the similar things in the multiple nuclei model, lower, middle, and higher class residential areas. You see areas of industrialization. You see areas of manufacturing, some of the same things that you saw in the other models. But you see, particularly this area here, this area out in the residential suburb areas, right? This is the edge cities, right? Cities that are, it's almost a replacement for the central business district, right? Harris and Ullman are saying, look, this central business district isn't what it used to be. People don't go down there anymore. They don't want to go down there anymore. They will go to the areas that are closer by. So you're going to have edge cities that have retail, that have office space, right? There is some level of, government there, but nothing too exciting. It's not really telling people what to do. It's just allowing these little organic places to build as needed, as people are moving more and more out to the suburbs, right? If we're going to compare these to a European city, right, it's very, very different. European cities are almost kind of reverse what you're going to see in an American city, right? In a European city, the wealthy and families will live near the central business district, right? In an American model, right, only the poor, right, tend to live near there. Now, we know that there are a lot of lofts and things that are being built, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But it is fashionable in a European city for people to live near the central business district. It's the poor that live out, right? If you can't afford to be in the middle area, right, you go out to the suburbs. In our area, if you can't afford to be in the suburbs, you go down to the center city, right? So you have a little bit of difference there, right? People live there with their families. American families want to have space and green space, and they want to go out further. So you're going to see a little bit of different patterns, right, with a European city than you are with a central city. So you should be prepared to talk about that if the need arises. All right, we're going to stop here, and then we're going to go on to the other models in the next section.